As a kid, I used to love playing dominoes. For hours, I would put the tiles one after the other. Completing the design until the promised moment finally arrived. What a pleasure it was to watch falling dominoes. The sound of crackling and rumbling would raise my heartbeat like a magnificent symphony. I prayed to God that I wouldn't put tiles in the wrong position, breaking the chain somewhere. Many years have passed since the sweet days of my childhood. The point in history I stand in is full of danger, and the domino chains are replaced by people. Now, instead of the crackling sound of the tiles, there's only voice that echoes in our ears. I lost my uncle, my aunt too, and many other loved ones. Why is there no one to break this chain? People are all blaming each other. One writes, "Why don't you stay in your freaking home?" The other shouts, "Why doesn't the government control the borders? Why does no one make a freaking effort?" And governments are pointing fingers at their citizens.
Instruction. You must stay at home.
Some governments decide to close their borders. Other governments attempt to increase their hospital bed capacity as they prepare for the COVID-19 cases. Some governments make mask wearing mandatory and implement martial law to enforce their rules over the public. Everyone is trying to break this damn chain. The domino effect must be stopped at all costs. But I have studied and researched for several years to be looking for something else today. Who was the one to push the first domino? This is an important question that people have forgotten in the midst of this crisis. My goal is to identify those who have sat in their rooms and now are enjoying the domino they have built. Those who are going to benefit greatly from this tragedy of the century. The story began when one of my college friends called me. Like me, he had also studied genetics. He made a statement on the phone that sounded more like a stupid conspiracy theory. Like those who believe that the Earth is flat and all scientists and politicians have united together and told us a big lie. Or like those who think there is only one government in the world manipulating the people all around the world. The common denominator of all these conspiracy theories is they have no scientific basis and go to great lengths to attract attention. But my friend's words sounded scientific, and the more he said, the more I got persuaded. I gave up all my stuff and joined his team. We gathered a good scientific team and started researching. The group members were several geneticists, virologists, immunologists, and bioinformatics experts. Some of them were in charge of searching, researching, and gathering information. We decided not to disclose our names because it can put our lives in danger. However, we made our research so strong that the results would leave no one in doubt. What is the nature of this monster? A monster called COVID-19. This was an important question we wanted to answer in the first place.
Coronavirus.
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 Coronavirus outbreak. The unprecedented move follows another spike in deaths from the virus.
You may remember that the first COVID-19 case was reported here, Wuhan City, Hubei Province, in China. A city that its news was followed by almost the whole world. In front of the worried eyes of 8 billion spectators, the Chinese government was engaged in fighting with an invisible gladiator that almost no one knew anything about. Of course, the Chinese have a history of fighting against SARS coronavirus in 2002, but the spread of this novel coronavirus was totally different from that of SARS. The rise of the COVID-19 cases got steeper and steeper. The hospitals squeezed for space, and the beds moved into the hallway and parking lots. The Chinese government clung to any solution possible. Within few days, they built new hospitals, declared martial law, and welded the doors shut to trap residents who refused to stay home. Many countries cut or reduced ties with China. But this turbulent situation gradually people were always used to experiencing the apocalypse in the movies. But now they were living in the apocalypse. It seemed that everyone was waiting for a savior to cut this tragedy. Was the coronavirus pandemic nature's revenge? Or was it man-made? There were rumors that exotic Chinese eating habits and unhygienic wet markets were the source of COVID-19. The US administration also blamed China and accused Chinese scientists for creating the COVID-19 as a bioweapon without providing any evidence.
Calling it the Chinese virus.
Like us, many research teams were trying to figure out whether the COVID-19 is a naturally occurring variant or a laboratory-leaked, man-made virus. At the moment I am narrating this to you, some of the scientists who have been researching on the origin of COVID-19 were suspiciously killed. Dr. Bing Liu at the University of Pittsburgh, who worked on the origin of the COVID-19, was shot dead in the United States. Russian scientist Dr. Alexander Sasha Kagansky, who has also been working on the COVID-19 origin, was stabbed to death and thrown off the 14th floor. We don't want this fate, so we stay anonymous. What I want to tell you is a little bit more complicated and scientific, but Einstein believed that you do not really understand something unless you can explain it to your grandmother. So, I will try to summarize the preliminary findings of our research in plain language. Coronaviruses are like this. They look like a tennis ball with nails sticking out of it. When viral particles enter their suitable living host, these nails, which scientifically are called spikes, bind to the receptors on the cell membrane of target cells. This interaction mediates viral cell entry and establishes infection. Bats and some rodents host several zoonotic viruses, including species of the coronaviruses, without getting sick. Indeed, bats infected with these viruses do not show clinical signs of the infection. It seems there is a balance between bats' immune system and viral particles enabling a long-term relationship with the host. Now suppose that this virus transmits to humans from bats. The surface proteins of coronaviruses, or nails, cannot easily bind to the receptors on our cells and make us sick. By analogy, we can say that bat coronavirus holds a key that is not able to unlock human cells and infect them. But this can happen in one way only. Coronaviruses can transmit from their primary host to another living organism, called intermediate host, more genetically similar to humans. In this situation, viruses can gradually get adapted to human-like receptors, facilitating their final transmission to humans. Now, the virus has the ability to unlock human cells. This happened more than 6 times before the COVID-19 outbreak. For example, in the case of SARS pandemic in 2002-2003, the virus was transmitted to civet from Yunnan horseshoe bats and eventually was spread to humans. Similarly, in terms of MERS pandemic in 2015, it was suggested that the virus may have originated in bats and was transmitted to camels sometime in the distant past and then transmitted to humans. But when the COVID-19 spread around the world, no one knew where it came from. It was a big ambiguity. We wanted to find out the origin of this novel virus as much as possible. The first hypothesis was that COVID-19 may have originated from a bat coronavirus with some mutations and transmitted to humans. In this scenario, the Chinese wet market was the main culprit. On the media, pictures of bat food were posted, the hypothesis telling that the Chinese eating bats caused the COVID-19 outbreak. But in this time, neither the bats carrying the ancestors of the COVID-19 nor the intermediate host that COVID-19 may have been transmitted from to humans were known. This is the biggest ambiguity raised on this issue. To test this hypothesis, we aligned genetic composition of the COVID-19 with the all previously characterized coronavirus species. The previously reported bat coronavirus has been named rat G13, with 97.5% similarity seem to be the ancestor of this rebellious virus. This was first pointed out by Shi Zhengli, director of the Center for Emerging Infectious Diseases at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But something was wrong. Based on the comparative analysis, the spike of the bat coronavirus, rat G13, was less similar to COVID-19 spike, thus basically lacked the ability to bind effectively to its receptors on the human cells. This means that the rat G13 virus is not able to enter human cells and cause infection. The question is, if the spike of the virus has mutated to get adapted to humans, when, where, and how did that happen? Which intermediate animal has the virus in its body that has been adapted to the human receptor? All scientists have been working round the clock on this topic until a well-known experienced group published the results. Dr. Christian G. Anderson in the Department of Immunology and Microbiology at Scripps Research Institute, along with Dr. W. Ian Lipkin at the Columbia University, published their findings in the prestigious Journal of Nature Medicine, one of the world's leading scientific journals. They suggested that the COVID-19, like several other coronaviruses, may have originated in bats. So far, the results of their research were similar to those of other scientists. But since bat viruses cannot directly affect humans, there must be an intermediate host between bats and humans. The same thing happened with SARS, MERS, and other coronaviruses. Despite proposing two other scenarios and rejecting them, Anderson and colleagues have claimed that pangolins or scaly anteaters, which are threatened with extinction, were the missing link between bats and humans in the COVID-19 outbreak. They believe that pangolins may have been infected with the rat G13 coronavirus in contact with bats, and as a result, the virus has evolved to infect humans over time and eventually transmit it to people and cause the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. They believe that pangolins may have been infected with the rat G13 coronavirus in contact with bats, and as a result, the virus has evolved to infect humans over time and eventually transmit it to people and cause the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Another claim of their research was that the virus isolated from bats had 97% similarity to COVID-19. So the virus is probably not man-made and mutated naturally in bats. These results sounded like a bomb in the world's media. Deutsche Welle, the BBC, the British Independent, and dozens of other reputable media outlets covered this research paper and broadcast the results. Interestingly, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs also referred to this research paper in an official statement to get rid of the unfounded accusations of creating the virus in Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, politicians that were relieved of the allegations for making the virus urged scientists to discover the COVID-19 vaccine. The fever of studying the nature of the virus went down, and all attention turned towards vaccine specialists. But we decided to continue the research in our laboratory because a series of vague points in this scientific theory attracted our attention that had already become a universal belief. Anderson's article, like the preceding studies, had claimed that the bat-rat G13 coronavirus is the distant ancestor of COVID-19. Our research revealed that the rat G13 virus has first been found and registered by Ms. Shi Zhengli. Ms. Shi Zhengli, director of the Center for Emerging Infectious Diseases at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, has claimed that they found the rat G13 virus in 2013 in Yunnan province. But the date she has inaugurated this virus to the world is very strange, January 24, 2020, 10 days after the first COVID-19 case was identified in Wuhan, China. A very big question was running on our minds. Why did Ms. Zhengli hide the discovery of this virus for 7 years? And why did she register the rat G13 exactly when the COVID-19 showed up? It seemed just like the red herring in a crime story. The murderer may have intentionally altered the scene in an effort to mislead the detective. Of course, that was not all. Researchers had claimed that the rat G13 coronavirus may have mutated in the body of a scaly anteater called the Malayan pangolin. But a key element has not been considered in this theory. The type of pangolin basically does not live in China. So, how does a virus that has originated from bats predominantly living in Yunnan province in China transmit to other animals that do not live in China at all, and suddenly is found in Wuhan, 1,200 miles away from Yunnan province? New evidence suggests that pangolins are susceptible to coronaviruses and may die because of infection. 16 out of 20 pangolins that get infected with the coronavirus do not recover and die eventually. So, if the virus has mutated in pangolins, it should not sicken them, and a long-term relationship might be exited between pangolins and coronaviruses, as it happens to bats. Scientifically, this shows that coronaviruses cannot be carried by pangolins for a long time. Thus, the virus has not an opportunity to mutate to a form that can infect humans. Therefore, based on this scientifically proven principle, the hypothesis of pangolins being host for coronaviruses is basically rejected. The more we completed our research, the more we got persuaded that COVID-19 could not have been transmitted from pangolins to humans. To be sure ourselves, so we can prove it to others, the best solution was genetic analysis. Well, you may remember the coronavirus spike and its human receptor, ACE2. We examined the COVID-19's receptor binding domain within the spike that interacts with a human and animal ACE2 receptor. To better understand, consider the virus spike as a key and the host receptor as the lock. Our research yielded significant results. The substrate binding cleft of human coronavirus receptor ACE2 is 100% similar in structure to that in monkeys and chimpanzees, the animals that are used for testing and study of viruses. This means that if a virus evolves in the body of these animals, it can be much easier to unlock human receptors and make humans sick. The substrate binding cleft of ACE2 proteins in cows, sheep, and hamsters are also 88% similar to that of humans. But the point is that this site in pangolin ACE2 is only 75% similar to human ACE2. This means the novel coronavirus is very unlikely to have been evolved in pangolins. Now let's take a closer look at the coronavirus structure. These are the amino acids that build the virus spike. This 4-residue segment plays a crucial role in the speed of the virus spread and its lethality. But our research showed that this fragment has never been existed in any other coronavirus strain. Interestingly, neither the ancestral bat virus, rat G13, nor the virus isolated from pangolins had this segment. The question is, where did these 4 additional amino acid residues come from? The residues, if any of them did not exist, the virus could not have killed so many people. This time, instead of looking for in the coronavirus's database, we went to examine the other viruses. The result was very strange. This segment exactly existed in the HIV-1 genome. At the same time, an Indian scientist came to this important conclusion and published his findings. But suspiciously, the research paper was withdrawn from the publisher's website shortly after. Now we were sure that the hypothesis of the mutation of the rat G13 bat virus in pangolins and its evolution to COVID-19 virus is obviously wrong. The similarity of these unique inserts in COVID-19 spike to HIV-1 is strong evidence that the novel coronavirus was most probably made in the lab. And its creators may have done a lot of work and spent years to effectively adapt this virus to humans. I had the feelings of a forensic pathologist who had dissected a dead body, a corpse that the whole world believes has committed suicide. But the forensic pathologist, based on the signs, is sure of a murder and conspiracy. Suicide is just a fake scenario to hide this conspiracy. Our team has reached a conclusion that COVID-19 virus, the killer of millions of people, to have leaked from a lab. But where did the traces of this laboratory go? We invited some friends who were experts in data collection and research for finding the answers to these questions. Simple questions every detective asks himself in investigating a crime. Who made the COVID-19 virus? What countries or individuals are behind this and have supported them? And what was the goal?
When our friends' research proved that COVID-19 was most likely a human-made virus, we started searching for the virus origin in the scientific literature and websites. The truth is that there were many clues, and surely there are not many who have the ability to create such a virus. We gathered a team of 10 and collected all the published articles dealt with coronaviruses for the last 20 years. We did not expect virus creators to explicitly state virus manipulating in their research papers, but they must have left their clues. The first research paper on coronavirus manipulation dates back to 2003. The U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick had published a paper with suspicious content. The authors had claimed that with employing reverse engineering technology, they have manipulated the genome of coronaviruses. One of the authors of the research paper was Dr. Ralph Baric. The scientist we got to know more about in our later searches. In 2007, again, Mr. Ralph Baric revealed strange research findings at the University of Carolina in an effort to establish an animal model for studying coronaviruses. He pointed out in his research paper that laboratory mice do not develop illness following infection with SARS-CoV. However, through a scientific process, he and colleagues succeeded to completely adapt the virus to mouse. Indeed, they created a new virus that can infect mice and reproduce all aspects of the human disease. The most important part of this study was that they identified 6 key mutations that enabled the adaptation process and increased virulence. Simply, now Ralph Baric and his colleagues had acquired a dangerous technology by which they can create a well-adapted virulent coronavirus for any host, including laboratory mice. an animal that is genetically very similar to humans. Ralph Baric and his team, who have found a way to modify coronaviruses, even went beyond this and tested their modified viruses on human cells. But this was not the whole story. We shared these papers with our research friends to find out more details. We found that Ralph Baric and his team have decided to adapt the virus to humans at all costs. Based on their published paper, Ralph Baric and colleagues has deliberately introduced mutations within the virus genome to bind to human cells. Now, with the occurrence of these mutations, the created virus was becoming more dangerous by the minute. Strangely enough, some of these changes they had introduced to their handmade virus are the same changes we see in COVID-19. Some time ago, I read a horror novel. In this story, an ambitious scientist called Frankenstein created a creature from various parts of different corpses that had a scary face. And eventually spread out of control and even killed his own creator, Frankenstein. In my opinion, the scientific research on coronaviruses was not dissimilar to Frankenstein's novel. They created a monster in the lab that no one can control. It was in 2011 that Columbia University published a study by W. Jan Lipkin and Peter Daszak. Jan Lipkin, a senior scientist in virology, has a high level of collaboration with the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. The same scientist who tried to prove that the COVID-19 is not a man-made virus and has been spread to humans in a natural way.
My name is Ian Lipkin, and this is my haiku.
Keep Peter Daszak in your mind, the second author of this research paper. What matters more than the content and authors of these research papers is that who does pay for such research projects and where are these scientists supported from? If you look at the end of this article, you will see that the US State Department, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Bill Gates Foundation have financially supported this research. Yes, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft and one of the richest people in the world. You may ask why Bill Gates is interested in these research projects. Well, he has an interesting explanation. Note that these remarks by Mr. Bill Gates were released several months before the COVID-19 pandemic.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes. We're not ready for the next epidemic.
Bill Gates has been in the field of health for several years. He always warns governments that they have to spend a lot of money to develop vaccines to get rid of these viruses. In this way, he was able to increase his wealth. The supporters of these projects claim that they are working to develop vaccines before a coronavirus can spread to humans. But if you look at the results of these articles, No vaccine has been developed in the last 20 years. Scientists like Ralph Baric spent millions of dollars researching the discovery of the coronavirus vaccines to prevent pandemics. But today, the danger of pandemics not only has not reduced, but also has increased day by day because of these dangerous research projects. Over the years, there has been much opposition against these dubious and dangerous studies by the USA. For example, Dr. Simon Wayne Hobson, a senior virologist at the Pasteur Institute, was strongly opposed to these studies. Oppositions that ultimately in 2014 forced Obama to stop such investigations. But the evidence suggests that research resumed under the heading of gain-of-function experiments. Pay attention to this research paper. The study was conducted in 2015 in China at the Wuhan Institute of Virology under the supervision of Shi Zhengli. But the research founders are the U.S. Department of State, the American EcoHealth Alliance that is directed by Dr. Peter Daszak, and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases that is directed by Anthony Fauci. In this research, they have generated a new virus by combining SARS coronavirus and a bat coronavirus that can enter human lung cells and is extremely powerful and deadly. Now, the big question is, why does the US fund research projects and partner with academia in China? Well, the answer is simple. These studies are extremely dangerous, and if the virus to get leaked from the lab by mistake, it's better to have it in a country far from the United States. But how does the US persuade other countries to partner with them and accept this kind of research on their land? This question led us to pursue the identity of Shi Zhengli, who's nicknamed Batwoman. According to Miss Lee's CV at the Wuhan lab, she tightly collaborates with the US Academy of Microbiology. With a little more searching, we found out that she is one of the real partners of the American EcoHealth Alliance, the organization which collaborates extensively with the US military, Department of Defense, and State Department. This means that the United States uses its own hirelings and infiltrators to launch these research projects in other countries. The archives of the Wuhan Institute of Virology show that the institute has been collaborating with American scientists for many years and is a strategic partner of the United States. Even the US Consul General has visited the institute. Of course, the news of this visit was removed from the website of the Wuhan Institute of Virology after the COVID-19 outbreak and is not available at the moment. Under pressure of oppositions, in the last year of the Obama's administration, the progress of these research projects sharply slowed down, and Obama has temporarily suspended funding for such dangerous projects. But in 2017, the Trump administration ordered the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to resume virus manipulating studies. Finally, the U.S. Department of Health started to resume these research projects within a published framework for action. But in the published framework, there are some strange and thought-provoking points. Here, it is stated that the virus that is being worked on must be highly transmissible and lethal, and must only be manipulated, not naturally originated virus. With the approval of Trump, the trend of these research projects accelerated again. At last, on March 2nd, 2019, and about 11 months before COVID-19 outbreak, Ms. Shi Zhengli published a research paper. This time did not include the names of her American partners. Shi Zhengli and her colleagues strangely predicted that a coronavirus similar to SARS and MERS will soon spread in China, and the Chinese government must urgently prepare for emergency measures. So, this is how, following the epidemic of COVID-19, Ms. Shi Zhengli registered the rat G13 virus 7 years after its discovery, the one who assures everyone that the virus is not man-made and has a natural origin, a claim that contradicted our findings. Examining the research papers since the last 20 years about coronaviruses led us to these 5 researchers. the scientists who pursued dangerous experiments with big research budgets. The EcoHealth Alliance, directed by Peter Daszak, was the pivot of all these studies. But it was clear that creating this virus was not limited to these scientists and laboratories. Financial tracking of the research papers led us to the governmental and military entities and agencies of the United States that set up and launched these mega projects. These organizations commissioned EcoHealth Alliance to carry out these mega projects, and Peter Daszak and his team are the executors of these projects. Mega projects that sometimes violate international laws and have dangerous consequences. Pay attention to this project has been conducted in 2014 in China. EcoHealth Alliance received a $3.7 million grant from the U.S. National Institute of Health to achieve specific goals in a 5-year period. The project main objective was to investigate the risk of coronavirus's transmission from wildlife to humans in China, especially in the Chinese wet markets. In this research, 30 bat coronavirus species were isolated and collected from the Chinese wet markets. The studies that have been conducted in collaboration with the Wuhan Institute of Virology and Ms. Shi Zhengli. In 2018, the U.S. Department of Defense launched a $6 million program in Western Asia involving studies on coronaviruses. With the financial tracking of this project, we noticed that the U.S. Department of Defense has awarded this grant to EcoHealth Alliance to sample 5,000 bats from West Asian countries and transport them to U.S.-based secret bioweapon labs in Georgia and Jordan. After the outbreak of COVID-19, a U.S. senator was opposed to the EcoHealth Alliance's research projects. He would have known the money has been paid to EcoHealth Alliance was spent on the research to spread coronaviruses from bats to humans. Of course, others also noticed these dangerous experiments. Georgia's ex-security chief, Igor Gergadze, revealed that the US-based Luger laboratory in Georgia creates biological weapons. This provoked fierce opposition from the Russian NBC Protection Troops commander. There were other projects aiming to collect coronaviruses from West Asia and store them in Georgia. Some of these scientists in these projects are bioweapon and nuclear weapon scientists. Extensive efforts are being made to collect coronaviruses with related human testing around the world, led primarily by the United States. Institutions such as USAID, a subsidiary of the US State Department, and foundations such as Rockefeller and Bill Gates Charitable Foundation. Now, all the projects are completed, and in this session, the simulation exercise is to be summarized. Just 3 months before the COVID-19 pandemic. 15 economic, government, and public health leaders were gathered here to practice in fighting with global virus pandemics, a biological exercise, just 3 months before the COVID-19 outbreak in China. The atmosphere of this 3-hour exercise is quite similar to military maneuvers, exercises that take place before a military attack on a country begins. Surprisingly, the Bill Gates Foundation is one of the sponsors of this conference in New York. You never hear them explain why did they get together at that time and what exactly they were practicing. The exercise began with the assumption that a coronavirus spreads from bats to pigs and finally transmits to human cells. The virus would spread gradually and conquer the whole world. In this exercise, some important individuals were also attended. One of them was George F. Gao, a senior virologist and director of the Chinese Center of Disease Control and Prevention, the same person who was also attended at the closing ceremony of the Rockefellers The Biosafety Level 4 laboratory in Wuhan, China, where the COVID-19 virus was created, was founded during his tenure in Chinese Academy of Sciences. Level 4 laboratory, where it has the highest standards of protection and biological safety, and dangerous research is done in this type of laboratory. Like Shi Zhengli, George F. Gao is also a real partner of EcoHealth Alliance, directed by Peter Daszak. 3 months before the COVID-19 outbreak, George Gao, along with several other top scientists under the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, have published a report which outlines several urgent actions by nations to face the pandemic challenge. Apart from Gao, there are other people in this board. Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci, directors of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. The person who predicted the emergence of a major pandemic disease in 2017 under the Trump administration.
For a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations. I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge, the coming administration, in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation, you will understand why history, the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID, will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with. That it is a perpetual challenge. It is not going to go away. So the thing we're extraordinarily confident about is that we are going to see this in the next few years. Thank you.
Fauci has a very close relationship with Bill Gates and has been an advisor to the US presidents for 35 years as the director of NIAID.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans, right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. You get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
This map illustrates the special distribution of Pentagon's biolabs around the world. Unlike the United Nations Convention on the Prohibition of Biological Weapons and Engineering Deadly Viruses, such laboratories are being built day by day. Now, under the diplomatic umbrella, bioweapons scientists have come together in 25 countries, moving forward to create engineered viruses. Viruses, if one of them gets spread, can cause another catastrophe. It has become a strange world. Persons who play a part in these dangerous projects go to their laboratories routinely, attend universities and classes, and are respected so much. Scientists who have million people's blood on their hands. But people who stand against this and want to hear an explanation from those in position of power are either killed suspiciously or, like me, have to stay anonymous. We even fear our photos to be seen. So you may ask, what is the motivation behind these crimes? Financial gain? Controlling world population? Or ambitions for world dominance? There is ample evidence for each of these assumptions. With large amounts of money, these scientists are working on very dangerous research projects in the same direction as the policies of the US government. And today, they are more close to their goals. Powerful people who rule the US behind the scenes, the Bill Gates Foundation, the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, and the Rockefeller Foundation gain huge profits from the COVID-19. For making a global vaccine, they want more funding for the organizations they have invested in. Following the United States, Bill Gates is the second largest funder of World Health Organization. After technology, he considers investing on vaccines as the biggest source of his wealth. Certainly, more important dimensions of this story will become evident over the time, but there's no threat or fear for those criminals. We live in postmodern era, where the world is under the information bombardment, not allowing people to distinguish between the reality and hyper-reality. We are dealing with people who have the media in their hands. All the individuals and institutions behind the creation of this virus we mentioned in this documentary must be responsible in the international judiciary for creating the biggest pandemic of the century, and that the resultant human catastrophe.